Latham's tweet?
That was
that
a real tweet.
Yeah, wow.
That was a real, yeah, that was a real tweet. I'll actually rig it up and I'll pull it up on screen because we're on YouTube. I don't know if I can even repeat it. But yeah, it's funny because Mark Latham, we're not a fan. I've been ringing him out on this show actually that's why I put Brown Nation in the title because of running Indians in Western Sydney. I found very personally offensive, and we'll get into that. But this tweet kind of funny. So yeah, I'll pull it up on screen now. But yeah, it's just it's good to see that Mark Latham at least still has some masculinity, unlike most Australian politicians.
I don't know if I would call it masculinity. What I see behind the eyes of Mark Latham is a brooding bitterness. There's an anger to Mark Latham that is not often or effectively expressed. And I think that's why sometimes he rips out stuff like this. Are you bringing the tweet up on the screen? Can you do that?
Yeah, I am. Just 1 second.
Is it different for YouTube or something? It shouldn't be.
No. I should have prepared more before stream. Sorry, boys. But here we go. I got it now.
Yeah, Mark Latham's got one of those. It's also tiresome kind of demeanors, but there's like an aggression behind his external persona.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. He is an intense guy, that's for sure. He was actually at the conference I was at the other day. He was telling a friend of ours, actually, I won't mention who, but he was having a conversation with a friend of ours, and he was going on about how Julia Gillard is a lesbian, and how that guy that he was married to was a homosexual, and it was just all for optics. They, got married for political optics, and I think they've actually divorced now. That was kind of funny hearing him rant about that. But anyway, Mark Latham,
is he wrong about that?
No, someone called him because the other day, I think we talked about it on the show. There was a kind of anti-trans Christian kind of event, basically, at in Belfield in Sydney at St. Michael's Church, which is a church in Sydney where there's a traditional Latin mass, and a lot of the Christian Lives Matter people, like the Lebos that run that, and some other people, they were there. Some other Catholic people were there, and they got a pretty good turnout. There were hundreds of people there, and Mark Latham showed up to speak because it was just before the election, and he wanted to talk about how, that One Nation's policies for trying to keep the trans stuff out of schools and things like that. Anyway, so he was doing a speech there, and Antifa types came and tried to counter protest. They basically got bashed and run out of the show, which is good to see. And he gave his speech, and then someone was calling him disgusting for basically being complicit in this and his attitude towards the LGBT community or something. And then so he kind of clapped back on Twitter with this earlier today, which quite funny. Then he deleted it, but I think about 6,000 people saw it or so before he deleted it. And then apparently Pauline put out a video that she'd been calling him all day. He wasn't answering the phone. And so she came out and condemned the remarks as deplorable or whatever. And the One Nation Party doesn't condone it.
Let me tell you, if you're going to delete a tweet because you're thinking, if I delete this, Twitter won't suspend me, or, I'm going to save some grace or somehow by deleting the tweet. It doesn't work that way. I tweeted something on Twitter once and it was only up for 60 seconds, but I realized it was probably a bit much. I deleted it and then I got suspended for it hours after it was deleted, even though it was up for a minute. So there's no point in deleting tweets once they're up, really. And has he made any apology for it, or has he just not said anything?
He said nothing. He's not even picking up the phone to Pauline. Pauline shouldn't have said anything, but she's got that James Ashby guy who's her right-hand man, who is a homosexual. So again, Cuck Nation, yet again, another classic cucking from Cuck Nation. But there was
speaking of cuckings, did you see that redhead chick who interviewed Nick Fuentes? She did like a big apology video, apparently. The
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
I haven't watched the video yet. Pardon?
She has a lot of black people who are involved in the show and that are on the show. It's a very, that kind of whole manosphere thing is a lot of blacks involved for some reason. And anyway, because of that, I think she started to get pressured because during that, I don't know if you watched the whole interview with Nick, but during the interview, she made some remarks about slavery, saying, basically downplaying how inhumane slavery was and that it's kind of overblown and made into a bigger tragedy than it actually was, and that a lot of the slaves, after they were freed, went back to their previous owners and sought conventional employment and so on. Anyway, so she got dragged over hot coals, and she is a coal burner, by the way. Like, she's had black boyfriends in the past and surrounds herself with black men. So I don't particularly like her. I thought she did a good job in interviewing Nick in that one interview, and it was good to get those ideas for them to have some exposure, because she's got a big YouTube channel with over like a million subscribers.
Someone should have told her, in politics, never apologize. Never.
Yeah, because now it'll never be enough. Like, they'll never, like, once you do something that offends them and you get quote unquote canceled, doesn't matter how many times you apologize, like, they'll never forgive you because they kind of perceive you as having the wrong thoughts. And I didn't really watch the video of her apologizing, but obviously it was a pathetic display. But from what someone told me about it, apparently there were people that were also calling into this stream when because she did an apology video, and then there was a stream where a whole bunch of black people were like, you're a white woman, you shouldn't say that, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, so then some people called into the stream and were defending her, saying, like, you're entitled to your own opinion. You don't need to be like, whether you're right or wrong, like, this is getting blown out of proportion. And she wouldn't even like accept the people defending her. She just would say things like, well, I shouldn't have said anything, and I don't want to say anything now. I'm already in enough trouble, kind of thing. So obviously quite cocked, but I mean, she's a woman who dates black guys. So, I mean, how much can you really expect from her? I don't really view it as a betrayal. She was never one of us anyway. So who cares? But as you said, it's another good case in point that apologizing gets you nowhere.
What's this Malcolm Roberts tweet? Look at the diversity, compare the pair. One nation is more diverse than Greens, New South Wales, who look like a clan meeting. But that's the thing. When you're representing all of these hard left viewpoints, you can be all white because you don't have to try to prove that you're not racist, because you're like campaigning, you're the anti-racists, right? You'll notice most anti-racists are white or made up of majority white people, right? Most people who aren't white, so-called victims of racism, they're not really interested in that kind of politics, generally speaking. That's the way I see it. The Greens don't need as many people of color, members of parliament, members of their party, because they don't need to constantly feel the need to prove that they're not racist, because no one's accusing them of being racist, right? They're the ones accusing everybody else.
Well, what's funny about this is I actually posted this photo so Malcolm Roberts, who, by the way, for those who don't know, Malcolm Roberts is a senator from Queensland for the One Nation Party. He used to be senator for New South Wales, I remember, because way back in the day, I actually flicked him a vote because he used to say some decent stuff. He'd talk about how Australia is an Anglo-Celtic nation, and he had some, like, he was a boomer conservative, but he was one of the better boomer conservatives. Anyway, he's progressively cucked over time. Like, he used to talk about cultural Marxism and stuff, I believe. Like, he had some more talking points back in 2016.
Yeah, like any politician, though, he'll talk about what's cool at the time. He'll talk about, because a few years ago, being openly critical of so-called cultural Marxism, that was kind of like mainstream alt-right theory and philosophy. It's what was being talked about. It's what was cool. And he was trying to get in on it, right? But now that that's not really like permitted anymore, all of that's kind of censored and cancelled. Well, now he's steered away from that. It's just mainstream political bullshit. It's what they all do.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically, the whole trajectory of the One Nation Party, because you got to remember back in 2016, that was when UPF was active, when you were active, you were a public figure in Australian political life, that you were making headlines, you were holding huge rallies. And so then they pull the One Nation Party was basically dormant for some time. In the early 2000s, Pauline Hanson was booted out of the party, left the party. There was controversy. I can't remember all the details. As I promised in an earlier stream, I will get into the deep dive research on One Nation, and we'll do a deep dive on One Nation's history as an episode at some point in the future. Not today, but she was basically retired from politics for some time, and then they wheel her back out of retirement because you guys are making waves. I think a lot of people thought that at the time, as a containment on this budding nationalist energy. The alt-right is this thing sweeping the English-speaking world, etc. And so they wheel One Nation back out, and they did very well in that election as well by their standards, as a minor party. In the time since, they've progressively cucked more and more and more. And we're going to get into some of that here. But this image that Malcolm Roberts posted with the Greens and One Nation together, I actually posted this on Telegram 2 days before he posted this. So I wonder if someone saw my post of it on Telegram and it somehow filtered its way up. But, you can see here One Nation, all these mystery meats, the Greens, pure Anglo-Celtic stock right there, to a man. But this from Malcolm Roberts, I mean, you already mentioned it, but this idea of like the left are the real racist, the Greens, they're like a Klan rally. I mean, this is incredibly cucked. This is a party that's supposed to be a party which stands against multiculturalism, and they never talk about that anymore. That's what the word One Nation means. Like the whole name of the party is that we are one nation, not many nations. And the whole Pauline Hanson's maiden speech to Parliament, we are being swamped by Asians. Well, now the One Nation Party has been swamped by Asians. It really is incredible sight to behold, them openly celebrating this. And as I said on Telegram, I think if you have a party that's its ostensible purpose is to provide opposition to the policy of multiculturalism, and now they basically embrace multiculturalism, that party needs to be destroyed. I mean, it fundamentally shouldn't exist. It's fundamentally counterproductive. I think it would, if the One Nation Party just disappeared tomorrow, it would be good for the nationalist cause in Australia. If all of it just disappeared, it would be great for the nationalist cause in Australia, because then it would have to reorganize some kind of coherent opposition to multiculturalism again. And when people vote for One Nation, they're casting a vote against multiculturalism. Generally speaking, that's what the base of the party. That's where their loyalty comes from.
And then they're just getting multiculturalism.
Yeah, I mean, they aren't observing. A lot of the average Aussie battler, they're busy at work, who votes for One Nation or would maybe vote for One Nation at some elections. They're busy with family, job, etc. They don't have time to be political animals like you and I, who are constantly kind of keeping up to date with everything that's going on. And so they don't see all of this. They just remember, the general vibe of what the party means and cast their vote, and so it's a betrayal to them. And they need to be seen as an enemy, not as the naive boomers who don't get it. They're just a straight up enemy. They're the new policy of One Nation is to embrace multiculturalism. That's the new policy. We saw that we discussed it on the show before with Mark Latham running Indians in Western Sydney, saying that the Indian community and its values of nationalism are One Nation values. I mean, this is just totally ridiculous. This statement by Mark Latham, and this statement by Malcolm Roberts really, it shows that it's not just Latham; it's the whole party has succumbed to this. And I was watching earlier today, Pauline Hanson was questioning Penny Wong in the Senate. Penny Wong as the kind of leader of Labor in the Senate, and she was basically talking about this new plan or this announcement that the government projects 650,000 migrants over a 2-year period of intake. And she was saying basically, well, during that same time period, there's only about 30,000 homes that are being planned to be built. We already have a housing shortage as it is. This is the worst housing shortage in Australian history. Even during the Great Depression, it wasn't as bad as this, according to some studies that I've seen. And they're just going to keep bringing in more and more people, but they're only committing to build about, as I said, 30,000 houses in that same time period. And so this is going to cause homelessness. It's going to jack up everyone's rents, but it's also going to cause homelessness.
In essence, Joel, like, what causes a home? Is it a rental crisis? Is it a housing shortage? It's a combination of both. What causes that? What if you had to encapsulate that and blame?
Well, it's very simple. There's only a certain amount of houses which exist. So if you bring in more people, they need to live somewhere, and so there's more people trying to live in the same amount of houses that previously existed, which means there's more demand for housing, which means the price of it all goes up. Because, like, for example, the other day, my step-uncle, he sold a property, and he said they wanted about $2 million. That's what they wanted for the family home. They wanted about $2 million as their asking price minimum, and they would have been happy to take any offer over $2 million. They put it to auction. They got 2.5. So, and I've seen lots of other reports of people they're putting more and more houses to auction now because there is so much, there is so much demand for housing that, in Sydney and Melbourne in particular, that basically house prices are getting bid up to crazy levels. So anyway, basically the long and short of it is more people, same amount of houses. If you don't build the equivalent amount of housing as the people that you bring in, you're going to get a housing shortage. People aren't going to be able to afford, the lower, like the kind of working class, lower level income earners aren't going to be able to afford housing at the level that they used to be able to get it. And it's going to cause a housing shortage. But my problem with this is the only angle under which Hanson was even attacking the government's policy, the housing shortage. It is a legitimate reason to attack the policy. But she said nothing about multiculturalism. She said nothing about how bringing in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of new non-white migrants every year is going to fundamentally transform, or is already fundamentally transforming, Australia's culture, the average Australian's way of life, the character of the nation, that is creating ethnic enclaves, that is creating division in the society, a lack of loyalty to the Australian nation. She didn't talk about any of these things like she used to. And so it just shows that the party has completely capitulated to multiculturalism.
It's a very different Pauline Hanson than the one, I suppose, people who grew up with Pauline Hanson would be used to. But, times change.